Peace and love, family. Peace and love, family. Welcome to another Read Book Club discussion. Tonight we are discussing the preface. A lot of us say preface, but it's really preface. But the preface of The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. All right. And so we're back. We're back. Make sure that you grab the book if you don't have it, family. And if when you grab the book, preferably, please grab the book from an independent black bookstore. Okay. It's a bunch of them in Baltimore. We have Everyone's Place. I refer to Everyone's Place as the literally the Kemet of consciousness, and so you can call Everyone's Place. They ship around the world. All right, and so you can call them and Baba Nati and Mama Tabby, or make sure that you get the book. All right. Or if you don't want to get the book and you just want to listen to the discussions, tune on in, listen to the discussions, because I'm pretty sure you're going to walk away learning something. Brother T, go ahead and introduce yourself to the listening audience.
Hello, family. How you doing? This is Brother T. Once again, we are at it. We had a little break, but we needed that time to regroup, to get some things in order. But right now, we're back reading The Color of Law, and this is a power-packed book, also showing us as a people how they written us out of the wealth gap. So this is a powerful tool that we have to jump on, and I'm glad that we picked this book because we want to take it step by step, break it down to the molecule in order so we can find out exactly how sinister the government was in keeping us away from that wealth that we could presently be using today.
Absolutely. And Brother T, you said we picked the book. Brother T, you picked the book because you no, and I'm just saying that because you actually did recommend the book to me some years ago when we were
Mhm.
reading Blueprint for Black Power. After we read that, you were like, have you need to read The Color of Money and The Color of Law. And so
Mhm.
remember, I purchased those books a few
Yep.
years back when you made the recommendation, but I didn't read them until now. And so I do thank you, Brother T, and I keep telling you this, man, for really, putting me on with some stuff because The Color of Money is fire. And so I know The
Yep.
Color of Law is going to be just as powerful. And I'm looking forward to us reading the book on reparations by Dr. William Daddy
There.
Daddy Darity. Yeah, exactly. After we read this, there's so many books that I want to just read with you and read with the book club. I want to read The Caste System by Isabella Wickerson, and
Oh goodness,
yeah, Nice Racism and White Fragility. I want to read all that stuff. And
that's the one
so
to be mentioned.
yes, yes, yes. So anyway, Brother T, shout out to you for
Thank
putting us on with the Color of Law. And I read the preface this morning, and I was blown away. I was like, man, this is powerful. But I got to be honest, when I read it, I thought about The Color of Money. I also thought about The Hidden Cost of Being an African American by Thomas Shapiro when I
you.
read this preface. But it seems like this preface, what the difference between The Hidden Cost of Being an African American and this is going into the laws that created that wealth gap that exists between black and white people. It seems like what Thomas Shapiro focused on was really, the consequences, right? The impact, the aftermath of what happened. And he mentioned he mentioned some things in there, but he really didn't go into detail. The Color of Money went into detail, and it seems like The Color of Law is even going into more detail, highlighting the policies, and I'm not the policies, but the laws that were created, um, that prohibited us from accumulating and perpetuating wealth. So I want to shout out some people that I see. I see my good sister Amina is in the building. Sis, I didn't forget about the t-shirt, just haven't been over there. Couldn't make it over East Baltimore yet to grab it. But when I grab my shirt, I'll be grabbing your shirt. She says, good evening, everyone. Hotep. And she also said that The Color of Money, authored by Richard Rothstein, she said, read it over a year ago. More evidence and receipts of how our people have been hindered and held back systematically via systemic racism. Peace and love to a beautiful mind. She says, peace and love, family. I see brother Steve Mack. Greetings from St. Louis, Missouri. Peace and love to you. I see Letitia's in the building. I spoke to her. She said she read the book some years ago, and she said it is a very powerful book. All right. Jamba. Let me see who this is. Sanjika Jamba. Ah, from France. Peace and love to you, my France. Man, I love France. And I'm not brothers and sisters like in Europe and in the UK. They always come through. Peace and love to you, brother. Glad you made it. Amina's telling you all to like, subscribe, and share. Let's get this discussion out, family. Peace and love to the Uhuru Academy. He said, I got my copy open now. Baba, you want to get on the chat? Hold on, Baba. Let me see you the link now. Hold on. Let me put the link in the chat, Baba, for you. Matter of fact, I'm gonna email it to you, Baba, just in case you want to hop on, because I know that you bring it. You bring it. And I love the perspective that you bring, Baba. So let me send it to you. I'm sending it to the info@uhuruacademy.com email. So that's the link, Baba. So I just shot it to you. All right, peace and love to Virgo Venom. Virgo Venom is in the building. Virgo Venom said B1 family. And Brother T, Dr. Maatz, B1 to your family. Yep, Amina said great education in these books mentioned. Yes. CJ Young is in the building. You right, it has been a while, King. It has been a while. Sister Denise is in the building. Greetings to you. Greetings to you, Sister Denise. Brother Nakia, 17. He's in the building too, brother. You need to hop on this panel too, brother. He has a dynamite perspective that he brings. So I'm gonna shoot this. I'm gonna shoot the link on over to you, brother, so you can hop on this panel. Matter of fact, I'll just throw it in the chat. So whoever want to join the panel, join the panel. All right. I see Ayapo is in the building also. Peace and love to you, Ayapo. And Brendan Dominic says yellow. So peace and love to everyone under the sound of my voice. Man, brother TB, coming to the end of Black August. Black August kind of went so fast. And yesterday we had a beautiful race first rally here in Baltimore. There were actually 11 race first rallies taking place all over the country. And there was a race first rally taking place in Tanzania. And these rallies were taking place simultaneously. All right. And so shout out to Bobby Emotep and PLM for organizing the Race First rally. He actually invited me to speak this year, Brother T. So, I got on that mic, and once I got on that mic, I got fired up, right? Just talking about how we need to be operating, with a race first mentality, which is going to permit us to organize and build. So we organize under that banner, right? Under just putting ourselves first, our needs and our interests first, Ashe. And then there's nothing wrong with that. And that was my message, Brother T, to the people. That there's nothing wrong with that mentality. We should not allow anybody to convince us that that's hate, to think of yourselves first, or what's the other thing? Or separatism, because other groups operate like that. And when they do, no one says anything. It's okay. It's okay for them to look out for themselves and to put their needs and interests before anybody else's. But when Black people do it, it's a problem. But it's a problem because they benefit from our disunity and our disorganization. We're able to be exploited and controlled when we're not unified and when we're not organized. So that's why they don't want us to do it. Because when we come together, we shut things down. And I'm saying things because my older cousin is in the building. I almost start cursing on the live stream. But when we organize, we shut it down, family. We shut it down. And so that is the issue. That is the issue. So anyway, family, we're going to jump into this preface. We won't be before you long, but we will be strong because it's just a preface. So Brother T and I don't want to wear you out tonight. All right. Because we just a preface. But in the preface, Brother T, well, do you want to start it off, Brother T? Because I always kind of throw it to you to kind of set the tone.
I know I can't wait to hear you break this down. But let me just start my little tidbit, and I want you to go ahead and give that meal right
Okay.
after I drop it off. But the one thing I love about this preface is that he explained so much, and it did remind us of all the great readings we had prior to this point. And that's why I think that we carefully picked all the books. And even with the book that we put, the Book of T. Washington, it showed the importance, of what we needed, in all the book clubs. It showed the importance of the laws we needed to know, how Booker T came into play, his power play, how he used the government in his handing. This book right here explains, if you did not know, as a as a black, as a displaced African, you know that it wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault that grandma didn't have the house.
Come
It
on, T.
wasn't your fault that grandma had to rent when others had the ability to build and build equity in their homes. It was a careful plan laid out, redlining they called it, that we were part of. And in his preface, he broke down the word de facto segregated, right? So we understand that people wanted to blame private businesses and private handlings our problems, and not and the government could have the opportunity to slither away. So the de facto segregation was basically stating in one thing, what? That the government had no hand in putting us in a situation. So if the government had no hand in putting us in the segregation, they wouldn't have to remedy it.
Come
My
on.
mom, my mom used to say the reason why people don't want to say they sorry, because after they say they're sorry, they have to do the things in order to fix it. You know what I'm saying? So the one thing that was laid down in this preface was that he wanted to put this definition of basically what de facto segregation was, and he put it clearly. It says we said they are de facto segregated, which meant that they result from private practices, not the law of government policies. De facto segregation, we tell ourselves, has various causes. When African Americans moved into the neighborhood like Ferguson, a few racially prejudiced white families decided to leave. And then, as the number of black families grew, the neighborhood deteriorated. Now, we think about white flight. As soon as blacks come in, we all heard of those terms, right? Or white flight. Blacks moved in, whites moved out. Now, this right here explains how whites had the ability to get those fat financing for the mortgages. See, it wasn't by choice that we stayed in the neighborhood. See, I doubt very seriously that our family members, our grandparents, our parents told us about a house increasing in value. I doubt very seriously at the dinner table we talked about how we was unable to move into better neighborhoods, but we probably condemned that one family member who didn't move out the neighborhood, who understood, hey, we need to move in a house with higher the ability to have higher wealth by having your house and build and more money. And what is that called again?
Equity, equity.
Equity. I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
We want to move in communities based off understanding equity. We were condemned when we tried to move out. We were condemned. We condemned those who understood that, hey, the reason why we have to move and get better housing is because we have to make sure that we build in a community that our house value, that we can create that wealth. Whites understood that, but the government gave them the ladder in order to move out. And this is what this preface at the beginning. It wasn't any private business. It wasn't any doing of themselves. They were given a helping hand. But once the ladder was given to them, the ladder was pulled up and removed. So this de facto segregation, like he said in this preface, the first page, it was not private. It was definitely a government given hand up. And we talked about this. I think I got fussed out a couple months ago when we talked about this with the Jay-Z, when he says, what can we do with credit? And I was saying it's not about the credit card. We got the MasterCard or Discover or the Visa. It's about the credit that the government gave to the Jews that allowed them to build the houses in Dumbo under the Brooklyn Bridge. It wasn't, you know what I'm saying?
Say it, T.
He should have stated that to make us understand that it was government, not private or not individual. So that's what I wanted to talk about in the beginning. I go and lay that out, lay some more out, and let the people know exactly why they should go grab this book.
And Brother T, look, they were mad with you because I took the clip, remember, and I put it on Instagram, and they were like, how dare you talk about Jay-Z? Because, in our community, we do a lot of personality worshiping, right? So a lot of personality worshiping and also celebrity worship, right? So you can't say anything about Jay-Z, or you can't say anything about, Beyonce, because what they call it, the Beehive come and get you. And then you got Nicki Minaj, and they call it the Barbs will come and get you. So you just can't say anything about these people. But what you were saying, brother T, was right and exact. You know, Jay-Z coming out telling us, shoot, we need to get our credit up, but they didn't give us the credit. They gave the Jews, they gave the white folks the credit. And so with that credit, they were able to buy things. They were able to invest in real estate. They were able to do all sorts of stuff with the handouts. Since they want to say that we're asking for handout. Well, hell, white folks have been receiving handouts for over 300 years, and shout out to Dr. Amos Wilson, who talked about that in Blueprint for Black Power on page 34. He has a table that talks about how from 1675 all the way to 1975, there were policies that were created that created wealth for white people. So how dare they say, when we say we owe something, oh, you just asking the government for a handout. No, we're not asking the government for a handout. We're asking the government for what is rightfully ours. What is rightfully ours, something that we earned, something that our ancestors their sweat, blood, and tears earned, their lives earned. Okay, so they owe that to us, and so that's what we're asking for. White folks were handed a whole lot of stuff, and so even Dr. Amos Wilson, and I know that we're not talking about Blueprint for Black Power, but in that book, Blueprint for Black Power, he talked about how a welfare system exists between white people and corporations and the government. And think about that. Let's go back to Barack Obama in 2008 when all the stuff was happening. He was bailing out big corporations, bailing out banks. We weren't getting bailed out. In fact, remember, our houses were upside down, T. And I'm speaking because I remember my mother receiving a letter. And at this time, I was about 20, was it 2008? So I think I was like in my late 20s. And she received a letter saying that her house depreciated by like $40,000 or 50,000, something along those lines. And so a lot of us became like upside down in our mortgage while he was bailing out banks and big corporations, brother T. So anyway, family. Brother T, I start getting fired up when I start talking about our ancestors. But Brother T, I love how you said earlier, because I was listening to you deeply. You said it's not our fault. So when I start thinking about my family, thinking about my grandmother right now, Evelina McFadden, and how she left South Carolina. She left South Carolina in 1961, 1962. I found it out from one of my eldest cousins who's in her late 70s. Last night we were talking, and I knew grandma left. I just didn't know when she left, because my family's from Sumter County, South Carolina. And so remember, the Great Migration, Brother T, took place between 1915 and 1970. And so, as Illabella Wilkerson would say, our ancestors were leaving out the South looking for the warmth of other suns. So they were looking for more opportunities. And so my grandmother was amongst that wave. She left Sumter County, South Carolina in 1961, 1962, and decided to come to Baltimore. And when she came to Baltimore, my mother told me that she used to go to Park Heights community where the Jews live. They actually still live in the Park Heights area. And she was a domestic worker, like a lot of Black women during that time. She had a 6th grade education, and she would clean houses for Jews. And she ended up cleaning houses for Jews. And eventually she landed a job at Shepherd Pratt Hospital working in the laundry department. But my grandmother, at one point, she lived over there, Brother T, off of Baltimore and Pulaski. She left Baltimore, Pulaski, then moved over East Baltimore. But again, Brother T, she moved in areas where we were concentrated. Like you said, we were right. I know people don't want to say ghetto, right? We don't want to say the ghettos or in impoverished areas, but that's where we were concentrated, Brother T. She was feeding, I think my grandmother was making about $20 or $30 a week, Brother T, a week. And then so my mother, at the age of 12 and 13, her and then my uncle, they had to work to help her support bills and help support their younger siblings. But like you said, Brother T, when I sit back and I think about my grandmother and all those other not even the baby boomers, the parents of the baby boomers, right? The parents of the baby boomers, how their lives were molded and shaped according the reality that they experienced, Brother T, was shaped by racist laws, right? and policies, brother T. So while white folks were given opportunities, our grandparents and great grandparents were denied these opportunities. And look what happened, brother T. The boomers, shout out to the boomers. The boomers had to endure that because they didn't grow up with a lot of opportunities. So, but they did go to school. That's one thing our grandparents pushed: go to school, go to school. So the boomers did that. And to me, brother T, and I talk about this all the time, that was the first generation that actually, I'm talking about in record numbers, graduated from high school, went to college, landed jobs. And brother T, like you said, they were like, man, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of here. So they began to leave what they call the inner cities, right? Or the ghettos. And they were looking like, well, wait a minute, I need to buy a house out here. And at the time, Woodlawn was popping. That used to be predominantly white area. But then when the more we started moving into the suburbs, remember the white folks started leaving, but they were like, we got to get out of here. But that was the first generation that said, we got to get out. Okay. Like our grandparents were looking for a warmth of other sons. So were the baby boomers. And so anyway, brother T, I love that you also mentioned like it wasn't our fault. So the stuff that they went through, the where they live, their environments, all of it was shaped by law. And again, like you said, the government can't admit it, T, because if they admit it, they gotta remedy it, right? So if they admitted it, they had to cut the check. And so they don't want to cut the check, brother T. So they will say, no, this was de facto segregation, meaning by de facto, we're saying that these things happen, on their own. It happened without government intervention, right? It was de facto versus de jure, right? Segregation, which means it happened as a consequence of law. And go ahead, brother T. You unmute your mic. I know you want to get in.
I wanted to make this point before we go any further because I just knew that you was going to bring it to this point, and you actually did when you talked about our grandparents, the parents of the boomers, right? So he did mention that um, on the preface. He stated that if one of those African American descendants now learned that the reason his or her grandparents were forced to rent an apartment, that reason his and her, no, okay, let me read it again. If one of those African American descendants now learn that the reason his or her grandparents were forced to rent an apartment is in an overcrowded urban area was that the federal government unconstitutionally and unlawfully prohibited banks from lending to African Americans, the grandchild would not have the standing to file a lawsuit, nor would he or she be able to name a particular party from whom the damages could be recovered.
Mm.
So this is powerful because this is exactly why we don't understand why our grandparents was in this overcrowded ghetto. Because if we understood the law, and the reason why I brought it up earlier, that we didn't talk about this at the dinner table about how our houses, if we moved in a certain community, we could have equity in a house. And from that equity, we can take that equity and we can fund colleges, or we can fund our children's first home from that equity. We didn't talk about that. But no one knew why grandma didn't have a house, why they had to fly to go to other areas of the relief, right? Because they were forced to be in those apartments that you couldn't build no equity. They was forced to rent.
Mm.
That didn't come to understanding till you explain. So we start moving in certain areas here in Baltimore, like the Woodlawn. Let's move to the county because that's where the county is better. That's when we start getting a little bit more equity. But not everyone had that opportunity. So he basically said in this part of the preface that, no one knew why our granddad lived in those in those apartments. So I just wanted to make that point before we went any further.
Absolutely. And I see that sister Amina, she joined the panel. Peace and love to you, sister. Did you want to chime in and add something to the bill, Queen?
Good evening. How's everyone doing?
Good evening, Queen. How are you?
I'm great. Dr. Mayat, I'm so glad you and Brother T decided on bringing this book to light for those who may not be, knowledgeable about Richard Rothstein's awesome book. A lot of what I also recall is that, when African Americans were finally allowed to be employed by, you know, um, builders of ships, and because they were coming out of the war, this is around the time of the Japanese Americans being placed in internment camps. Um, when they were finally allowed to be employed, um, what happened was is that, okay, yeah, you have a job now, but you have no place to live. So when African Americans were trying to find housing, they were forced to go live in the inner city, and they could not live near the workplace, whereas the Japanese Americans were allowed to live near the workplace. And this is where in subsidized housing, because whites and Japanese were allowed to live in subsidized housing known as projects, as we know
Mm,
today.
mm,
Which end up what ends up happening is that the up and coming, earning, even so-called working class African Americans were forced to live in impoverished environments along with the people who did not have the fortune of gaining employment. It causes dissension, it caused strifes, it caused a form of even more endemic ghettos, and kind of keep the now working African Americans in a place of poverty and strife, and not allowing them to go up to send up the ladder of mobility. That happened. Yes, when they were allowed to move in subsidized housing, the whites who were given GI Bills and the Japanese Americans who were coming out of internment camps were allowed to progress as well. So, and to add insult to injury, HUD and all of the local, state, and local and government entities that were um, uh, put in place wrote restrictive covenants that would continue to hinder newly employed African Americans who also fought in the war, World War II, to be denied the GI Bill and to be held back even further, even though they were making sometimes more than the white and Asian counterparts. They still found those restrictive covenants to bind them to the government, acquiesced in those discriminatory restrictive covenants, even when it also came to purchasing homes. They were denied, they were under table agreements, there were, factions of white neighbors that would throw Molotov cocktails through the windows. They weren't
mm.
allowed to actually have real mortgages. It was only contracted, high interest rates. And they were also, um, you know, forced out of their homes when they did buy, even when they could afford, whether they were gainfully, entrepreneurially um, thriving, they were still denied the so-called American dream. So when you hear people say, "Oh, African Americans, just pull yourself up by your own bootstraps," well, when you take the boots and make a person a footless person,
Come on.
what reprieve are you giving them? You're not. You're not. You are continually holding people down with your foot on their necks. So, no immigrant to this country, whether you be from Latin America, whether you've been from um, Latin part of the border, whether you be from Asia, whether you be from the continent or from Europe, can ever say, to a natively born descendant of enslaved Africans, "Oh, you guys don't help yourself." There are too many. We have too many receipts, and Mr. Rothstein's book is only one of the hundreds that reveal um, all of the systematic debauchery, diabolical hindrances of our people. To the point, I think that we're in a state where the descendants are tired. They're tired of fighting. They're just totally um, disenchanted. They have given up.
Mm.
to the point where you notice, even out of Reconstruction, we were not killing ourselves the way our youth are killing us systematically now today.
Mm.
So I think this is just, this is a well-oiled machine of systematic institutional racism that our beloved and brilliant scholar Dr. Francis Quelch Wellsting has always taught us about. And you know, we're psychologically ill people, and that's not to let us off the hook. But you have to understand, if you put any other people in this diabolical designed system, how would they thrive?
Mm. Mm. T,
Thank
give it.
you.
T, give her that. She could hit the.
I wish I could, but this, bam, 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 bam.
That's what I was looking for. That effect.
I
That.
was trying to get it all in it. I was trying to get
I'm
it
like,
all.
man, that was woo. She
But
came in here. It was look
it's
mic drop. It was
encompassing
just
all of that. It's encompassing all of that. It's not just one thing. This
right.
is diabolical. This is designed.
Mm.
Even your Constitution gives credence to everything that Mr. Rothstein and so many others have proven. The evidence is there. The World Court says nothing. The International World Court, and I've reached out to them, Twitter, Instagram, email. They say nothing. They can reach back to the people in Burma. You can go help them out, but as to what the Burmese government is doing to them by pushing them out of Burma or Myanmar, but you can't say anything to this systematic inhumanity that's being um, forced upon, and it's
Mm-hmm.
it's like living in torture 365 24/7,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and no one says anything. Then you're complicit, and you all are demons,
Mm.
and that is what it's saying. Thank you
Mm.
for allowing me to speak today.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Queen, for your powerful, powerful, powerful commentary. I love that sister. That's my sister right there, brother T. She's a warrior. And I know a warrior when I come across one. She's a warrior queen, and so and highly intelligent, very passionate about our people, and you can tell that she does her research and she knows what she's talking about. So salute to you, Queen. Thank you so much for coming in and giving us your input. Go ahead, brother T.
Very eloquent in
Mm-hmm.
her delivery and that
Mm-hmm.
disclaimer. She hit some great points that we'll be talking about in the later pages of this preface. So I really appreciate her coming up and sharing that with us.
Absolutely, and I love that she mentioned the Constitution, right? Because in the preface or preface, uh, uh, Rothstein says that he was like, "Look, he said residential racial segregation by state action. He said it's a violation of our Constitution and his Bill of Rights. So he said the Fifth Amendment, right? He says written by our founding fathers prohibits the federal government from treating citizens unfairly. The 13th Amendment adopted immediately after the Civil War prohibits slavery or, in general, treating African Americans as second class citizens, while the 14th Amendment, also adopted after the Civil War, prohibits states and their local governments from treating people either unfairly or unequal. So he's basically saying it's a violation, right, of our rights. But I remember Dr. Amos Wilson. Yeah, I always go back to him. Falsification of African consciousness. He said laws are only as good as the people who enforce them. So you could put laws on the books, but if those laws aren't being enforced, then what good are they? It's just words written on a piece of paper. Okay. And so anyway, okay, so he's saying that residential racial segregation, it violates our rights. And he goes on, family, to talk about like the attitudes of some of these support court justices, brother T. So when racial segregation cases were brought before Supreme Court justices, a lot of them looked at it like, man, the government didn't do that. The government didn't create that segregated neighborhood. That was what they refer to it as social discrimination. It's on society. You all are doing that. that wasn't us, that wasn't our hand. And so he mentions a few of them. I'm moving on, Brother T. Chief Justice John Roberts. Another case, I'm looking for the person's name. They said it, and shout out to Detroit. I saw someone from Detroit in the building. But in the preface, they mentioned that a group of civil rights folks sued to desegregate Detroit public school. But in 1974, by a 5-4 vote, 5-4 vote, the Supreme Court disagreed. And it said the majority reasoned that because government policy in the suburbs had not segregated Detroit schools, the suburbs couldn't be included in the remedy. And Justice Porter, that's what I was looking for. Justice Potter, I'm sorry, Stewart, explained that Black students were concentrated in the city, not spread out through Detroit suburbs because of unknown and perhaps unknowable factors such as in-migration, birth rates, economic changing, or cumulative acts of private racial fears. He concluded the Constitution simply does not allow federal courts to attempt to change the situation unless and until it is shown that the state and its political subdivisions have contributed to cause the situation to exist. No record has been made in this case showing that the racial composition of Detroit school population or that residential patterns within Detroit and the surrounding areas were in any significant measure caused by government activity, right? So then you had another situation that happened in 2007. So that was in 1974, but in 2007, it says right here that Chief Justice John Roberts in 2007 wrote an opinion. It was something going on in Louisville and in Seattle, and so his opinion prohibited school districts in Louisville and Seattle from accounting for a student's race as a part of a modest school integration plans. So something was going on in Louisville and going into Seattle. They were trying to integrate schools, and so this case was brought in front of him. And so he says, well, wait a minute. He says the chief noted that racially homogenous housing arrangements in these cities had led to racially homogenous student bodies in the neighborhood schools. He observed that racially separate neighborhoods might be a result of societal discrimination, but said that remedying discrimination not traceable to government's own actions can never justify a constitutionally acceptable, racially conscious remedy. And in quotes, he says, the distinction between segregation by state action and racial imbalance caused by other factors has been central to jurisprudence, where racial imbalance is a product not of state action, but of private choices. It does not have constitutional implications. So that was his ruling. Okay. And then it says that Chief Justice, in 2007, when he uttered those statements, he was actually quoting from a 1992 opinion by another justice, Justice Anthony Kennedy, in a case involving school segregation in Georgia. So all of these justices, Supreme Court justices, T, are basically saying the same thing. This is societal discrimination and personal choices, right? As if these people aren't incentivized by the government to keep their neighborhoods racially homogenous, right? And so they're saying, wait a minute, this is personal choices. These are societal discrimination. The government didn't cause this, right?
How,
Keep on going,
how,
brother.
but how soon do they forget? And then the preface, page 9, Rothstein states that today, however, most Americans understand that prejudice towards and mistreatment of African Americans did not develop out of thin air, right? So if we know that prejudice and discrimination and obstructions did not create out of thin air,
come on,
how can he say there was private choice that or just societal norms that caused it, not government? Well, let's see this. In 1968, it was a law from 1866. You remember in 2020, Byron Allen went against the Supreme Court using this same law.
he sure
It was
did.
way before FHA.
He sure
the
did.
Fair Housing Act. It was way before all this that we were not supposed to be discriminated against or held back from any of the wealth that was in this country. So how soon that court that justice or that judge forgets that 1992 he wants to, hey, we never did nothing. It's never been government. Well, let's talk about this, okay? In 1968, it was a Joseph Lee and Barbara Joe Jones. Their successful 1968 lawsuit established that housing discrimination is a badge of slavery. It was a court case, and they won, proving that slavery, all the things that slavery brought afterwards against African Americans, held them from housing. So, how could this judge part his thin lips on stating that it was private choice that kept us away from the fruit of house of home ownership? It states right here. Now, I want to bring up Byron Allen because he had to prove that because he was black, Comcast kept him from getting his own channel. He couldn't prove it,
No.
unfortunately. But this right here,
Because they don't say it. They don't say it to you. They don't tell you, I'm not giving this to you because you're black. You know what I mean? So that's why he couldn't prove it because no
he
one
could
said
prove
it,
it.
right?
I think they learned from this time in 1968. They said, you know what, we got to make sure we tighten this up a little bit. You had to prove 100% that was discriminatory. This court case proved it. We go to the preface for those who have the book and those who will have it next week. Go to preface page 9, and you'll see talked about this interpretation that's not far fetched. Indeed, it is similar that was eventually adopted by the Supreme Court in 1968 when it effectively rejected its 1883 decision. In 1965, Joseph Lee and his wife, Barbara Joe Jones, sued Alfred H. Mayer Company, a St. Louis developer who refused to sell them a home solely because Mr. Jones was black. And this was an interracial couple. Now, I can't remember what year the Love court case was. I think that was around 1964, 1965. Someone in the chat correct me. So um, marriages, interracial marriages, were now bound, and you could legally do it in Virginia, I believe, right? So I think this is around that year. So I like to tie dates and other court cases together because this was an interracial couple. But they did go to court and they won because they could prove that it was discrimination because he was black. So they won. So I just wanted to mention that part. I didn't want to roll over it because how could that judge part his lips and say that, hey, discrimination doesn't exist and government has no standing? It does. Not just private companies, but also state and also government. So court cases have proven that there have been cases that people have been discriminated against because they were black. So yes, redlining does exist, and we still even have the remnants today. Think about
Absolutely.
this. Think about this.
Absolutely.
How many times have we heard in the last couple of years a person go get their house appraised? They can't tell you can't move now, but they can also keep you from getting the most out the equity of your home. There's been times that a house get appraised over like under $200,000 of what it's worth.
We saw it. Yep.
It was just here in Baltimore, and so they had to remove all blackness. Don't have the frailty book, the white frailty book on your bookshelf because you may upset your home appraiser. And they purposely devalued the house by almost $200,000. They put a lot of white pictures up, and the house went up about 200,000, 275,000.
I remember
So
that.
all these things happen today, even though these laws has been set in place since 1866. That's my rant.
Facts. No, facts, Brother T. Facts. 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 Sister Amina said, yes, Brother T. BJ, I see BJ is in the building. BJ, unmute your mic, BJ. You have the floor.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Oh, peace and love to you, Queen. I thought that was you. I wasn't sure, but peace and love to you, Queen. How are you?
Well, I think I'm doing good. Loving the topic. I sort of understood prior to reading Rothstein's book, but he brought it down to a whole nother level that it was the government that spearheaded when they created the housing department to keep African Americans from being able to live in homes. Even when you had communities that were willing, because it was like based upon if you had one Black family in that community, you could not get a mortgage. So that
Mm,
means it affected everyone. So they wanted to make sure it was separate. We held Eleanor Roosevelt for bringing in the projects and taking us out of homes that were dilapidated. But many people don't realize the projects was not built for you know affordable housing. It was built for the troops to come back to when they were coming back from war. They said, it looks too much like a barrack. I want my own house. So then they started building all these Cape Cods and all this housing boom to
mm,
move them there. And they like, well, we got these buildings, what we're going to do with it. That's when we got in there. Then to look at how when we were able to afford those homes in whatever community, because again, literally we had to double, triple up in order to afford to keep it, let alone maintain it. They then said, okay, no, this area has a housing association. And based upon the housing association, we're not going to allow you to come in. So all these things were put in effect that we're still dealing with now to prevent us from moving into certain communities. And then on top of that, they threw in the freeway. Because again, now we're incentivizing business from leaving urban areas and moving into the suburb. And so they started tearing up our business districts, which had a huge impact on our, economic sovereignty,
mm,
and pushing everybody north of the city, building housing for them to live in those communities that we could not get to. So you had people driving 6, 7, 8 hours just to be able to get to work. So it's never one thing when it comes to them. And we
mm-hmm,
simplify it as why your neighborhood looks at, oh, you guys are lazy, you just don't take care of yourself. Most of the time, you're moving into a home that's been owned by how many generations before you got to it. So, of course, it's going to need a bunch of repairs that you got an overinflated mortgage you can't afford to do.
mm,
They then can sell that home generation after generation and gather wealth for their kids, their grandkids, for generations to come. If we were put on that same level field back in just go back to after the World War II, and we were able to get those homes and we were
mm,
able to pass it on to our families. Just looking at that one small piece of it, can you imagine how much wealth we would have had and how much we would
mm.
have generated and how much it would have pushed into our economy and how much it would have pushed into their economy? But the hatred runs too deep. They would not allow for that to happen.
And I'm glad that she mentioned that. I'm glad that Sister BJ mentioned World War One and World War Two because Robert Rothstein mentions that in the preface. I think on page 11, Brother T, where he says African American World War II veterans did not apply for government guaranteed mortgages for suburban purchases because they knew that the VA would reject them on account of their race. So applications were pointless. Those veterans then did not gain wealth from home equity appreciation as did white veterans, and their descendants could then not inherit the wealth as white veterans descendants. So Sister BJ, you killed that.
Yeah, and people don't realize when they left the cities, they got subsidized to go out to those suburban communities on top of everything else.
Mm. You said they got subsidized to get out to those suburbs. You're right. You're actually right, T. I think we learned that in was that Shapiro or The Color of Money?
That was Shapiro's book. He talked
Okay.
about that because that's when he identified those 6 families and explained, those laws as well. But each one of those books we read touched on this, especially when it came down to World War II and the soldiers and how they were treated differently. and how blacks didn't receive the FHA loan as readily as whites, and also the education um, the grant that was also given. So yeah, she's right on point
On
with what she
point.
stated.
Look, the warriors, the warrior queens are coming out tonight. We had Sister Amina, she came in, and then Sister BJ came in, dropped the mic, and so Sister BJ, thank you so much, Queen, for your input. We appreciate it, Queen.
Oh, thank you so much. And don't forget about the same things going on with gentrification as well. Subsidies to
Facts,
get them back. You
facts.
guys have a beautiful evening. Take
You do the
care.
same. You do the
Thank you
same,
so
Queen.
much.
Thank you so much. We had
Okay,
some
bye.
we had some powerful queens come through here today. I see African in Detroit is in the building. African in Detroit. I give you the mic. Give me 1 second. I want to get through this really quickly. T, I want to read this, and I'm gonna join Africa in Detroit to the panel, but I want to read something. So he goes. I'm at the bottom of Roman numeral XIV. So I guess that's 14. He says the color of law demonstrates, and we're talking about the book, that racially explicit government policies to segregate our metropolitan areas are not vestiges, were neither subtle or nor intangible, and were sufficiently controlling to construct I say de jure, the Yori segregation that is now with us in neighborhoods and hence in schools. The core argument of this book is that African Americans were unconstitutionally denied the means and the right to integration in middle class neighborhoods. We were locked out. Okay. And it says, and because this denial was state sponsored, which they don't want to admit, the nation is obligated to remedy it. So he goes on to talk about this, Brother T. I don't want us to skip by this. He says many legal scholars are properly skeptical of the distinction between de jure and de facto segregation. Where private discrimination is pervasive, they argue discrimination by public policy is indistinguishable from societal discrimination. So he says, for example, if it becomes a community norm for whites to flee a neighborhood where African Americans were settling, this norm can be as powerful as if it were written into law. Both public policy discrimination and societal discrimination express what these scholars term structural racism, in which many, if not most, institutions in this company operate to the disadvantage of African Americans. It is pointless, these scholars argue, to try to distinguish to the extent to which these institutions racially disparate impact originated with private or public discrimination. Government has the obligation, they say, to remedy structural racism regardless of its cause decades ago. So basically, these people are saying, look, whether it's de facto or de jure, it needs to be remedied. The government needs to fix it, and they're saying, look, it's kind of hard to distinguish between the two because at the end of the day, with de facto and with societal discrimination, it happens so systematically, it's as if it was law anyway. So they're saying that they need to fix it. But the author goes on to say, he was like, look, what he wants to argue is this, and I'm looking for it at the bottom of the page. He says, these scholars may be right, but in this book, I don't take their approach. He said, rather, I adopt the narrow legal theory of Chief Justice Roberts and his predecessors and colleagues. And he said, and their likely successors. They agree that there is a constitutional obligation to remedy the effects of government-sponsored segregation, though not of private discrimination. He said, I'll take them at their word. Where the color of law differs is not with their theory, but with their facts. He says, for those who, like the court, believe that the Constitution requires a remedy for government-sponsored segregation, but that most segregation doesn't fall into this category. I hope to show that Justice Roberts and his colleagues have their facts wrong. Most segregation does fall into the category of open and explicit government-sponsored segregation. So he's saying that the other scholars are saying, look, you can't distinguish between the two. Government needs to fix it anyway. He said, I'm going to argue that most of it falls into government sponsored segregation. So most of it falls into de jure segregation. And that's what he's going to argue in this book. And he goes on to talk about how we need to remedy this. And he says, and I love how he concluded, Brother T, with this. He said, over the past few decades, we've developed euphemisms to help us forget how we as a nation have segregated African American citizens. So instead of saying ghetto, we say inner cities now. You know, instead of saying racial integration, we just say diversity, right? Uh, he says, and so we got to be careful of these euphemisms. He even talks about people of color. You know, he says that when we wish to pretend that the nation did not single out African Americans, they lump African Americans with everybody and just say people of color. And so, T, the crazy part is we adopt their euphemisms. We'll sit there and say the same thing. I'm telling you, black people get mad at me. Our people, our displaced Africans get mad at me for the T. When I say we do everything white folks do, we say everything they say. They start saying diversity, we saying diversity. They say minority, we say minority. They say people of color, we start saying people of color. And not understanding that these are euphemisms to make them forget how they treated us. So we have to be careful, family, with the words that we use to describe our condition and what happened to us historically and what's happening to us presently. Go ahead, Brother T.
Define ourselves. That's basically
Define. That's right.
ourselves. And when he mentioned something, and I cannot find it, I was trying to locate it, but you were saying all the points I underlined as usual. You you hit those points. One thing he said, we just can't point the finger at the white man.
Mm-mm,
In so
mm-mm.
many words, he stated this. Why? Because they have actors, and they have actors, meaning they put anybody in place, and they act out the part of discrimination. So we say, I know many say, oh, Baltimore is a black ran city. We have black officials, black mayor, black city council. We gotta understand this one thing: they put actors in place,
Come on, T.
and those actors act the part of racial discrimination. There's no change. The job is to do the same. You may have that one person that stands up to say, "Hey, this is wrong." They'll find some way to ice them out. They'll find some way to ice that person out because it's going against the plan. So do not be, ran amok. Make sure we keep our mind, our thinking cap open, that they put people in place to continue this works. And this preface has definitely had a lot of great points. I'm glad we hit a lot of them, and I'm just glad that the people we had up, Sister Amina, Sister BJ, they was hitting points as well, and
Are they?
all of them is less than 20 pages. This preface was knocking out a lot of good points, and I'm glad we brought them up tonight.
Ashe, Ashe, and Brother T, what you said was powerful. You said they have actors, Brother T. I was sitting here thinking about Biggie. Your mom's an actress, didn't want to show me the safe. It's okay. No, I'm just saying. That's what I thought about when you said actors. But that's just reality, T. Like you said, that's just real stuff. That is actors. So it don't even matter who you put in the driver's seat. The car is already going. So it doesn't even matter. We talk, like you said, in Baltimore. Oh, you got even like in Atlanta. Oh, it's a black city. These are these are black faces in a white power structure. That's what it is. At the end of the day, it's a white power structure, and we're happy when we see black faces in the white power structure. You dig? And so anyway, I see that Baba said something in the chat. I see Uhuru Academy. He said that at the foundation of maintaining and practicing these policies is the inherent belief in our own inferiority. Ghetto is no longer a place. We've turned it into an adjective to describe us. Powerful, Baba. Powerful, Baba. Baba, I couldn't get you on the link. Baba ain't click that link, Brother T. But Baba would have been on here. He and I start going, Brother T. This would be about 2-3 hour show with Baba. And I start building. We start building. It'd be 3 hour show. But anyway, at the end of the preface, he says, Rothstein says that we have created a caste system in this country. Shout out to Isabella Wickerson. She has a book called The Caste System that I would love for us to read. But anyway, he says we have created a caste system in this country with African Americans kept exploited and geographically separate by racially explicit government policies. Although most of these policies are now off the books, they have never been remedied, and their effects endure. And so I'm looking forward, family, to reading chapter 1, reading and discussing chapter 1 next week at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But before we go, I'm going to give Africa in Detroit the floor. Africa, Detroit, I'm bringing you in. You have the floor, family. Peace and power to you.
How y'all doing? Peace to the elders. I just wanted to build on what y'all said because a lot of people forget that it used to be law.
You muted your mic, King.
But a lot of people, I'm sorry about that, but a lot of people forget that it used to be law for whites and other people, like they had to follow certain laws that they would get punished for even helping black people. And what y'all going into, some of these things were like sanctioned by the government. They could get jail time for certain things for going against it. And so this was public policy at a certain point. Dr. Claude Anderson goes into it and talks about how this is like the state sanction everything, and this was all through the whole society of America since conception. They made it so when they said this is a white nation. So I sometimes I feel like it's even cognitive dissonance on other people, even our own people, for saying that it's not affecting us today and that this not discrimination and all of this is not around. But I land my plane right there. That's all.
Hey, no, brother. I sound like somebody in the back. He said, let me mute this real fast. But thank you so much, young warrior, for coming. Shout out to the young warriors, Brother T. Brother T, man. So you got African in Detroit. That's a young warrior. I can hear it in his face. And hear it in his voice. He came in very respectful. Peace to the elders and peace to you. We're not quite elders yet. Brother T and I, we're not there yet. Well, but I know that to him, we got him by about 20, 25 years. So he looking at us like,
you must think this gray in the beard.
yeah,
I'm only 22, but
oh,
yeah.
look, he probably sees some great. My grades are coming in too, Brother T. So he's 22. So he looking at us like these the elders, but not quite. I'm not quite there. I'm climbing there though, and hopefully one day I will be there. But that's elder is it's an honor, even to be viewed as an elder. Ashe. And so the warriors in the building. 22, you heard him. 22. Usually we have young Ryan. Young Ryan is, I think, like 21, 22. Jeremiah Africa, he's 26. Another young warrior, Brother T, took a picture with me. I think he's 20. He showed up at the Race First rally. He said, Doc, I've been listening to you for years. Love your podcast. And so the young people are listening, Brother T, and I give thanks for that. I give thanks for the young people who tune in, who say, you know what, let me cut off, let me turn off the Fortnite, right? Or some of them may not play the games at all, but they could be doing that stuff because a lot of young people, they're on TikTok, they're doing the dances. I saw you out there, Brother T, with your daughter. You was on there. She got you, Brother T. I saw you on TikTok, Brother T. And so a lot of people on TikTok, they're on they're playing Fortnite and what is it? Roblox. That's the new thing now. Roblox. And so, the young people, I always tell them, my students, at the university, that we had distractions, but I can't imagine, Brother T, if we had the internet. It's like I told them, you all have access to so much more. I mean, we mainly kind of stayed in our neighborhood, and you may have went out your neighborhood and went different places and stuff like that. I remember we used to have the Baltimore chat line. Everybody used to get on the chat line. I mean, we had little things, but can you imagine chatting with people around the world, around the country, seeing the stuff that so I commend young people who say, you know what, let me tune into a Dr. Ma'at type of show or build, or Brother T type of build, or let me holler at Baba Amin, I appreciate and salute those young people because they could be somewhere else doing something else. And so I love to support and salute the young warriors. I let Brother Nakia Abdul, he's in the building. Peace and love to you, King. All right, we getting ready to close out, but I'm gonna let you close us out, King, with your thoughts on the build tonight. If there's anything you wanted to add.
Yeah, I just simply wanted to say, can you hear me?
Yeah, you loud and clear, and you look
Okay.
good. Your lighting looks
Thank you.
your
I
lighting looks
appreciate
good
it.
too.
Look, peace and love, and I appreciate what you guys are doing. It's conversations and things like this that really help uplift and build our people. So, first off, I'm honored to be sharing the platform. But I just want to make one quick point. As we jump in, we talk about this, right? And the question is law colorless? Well, to answer that question, you really got to go back and you got to examine the identity crisis that we are in right now, right? We fall into the victim of being subject to what they say and what they tell us and how they categorize us and how they put us in these different boxes and manipulate us and use that to capitalize, aka a system of capitalism, which is what it was changed from when the physical chains were taken from us, right? And they did this right here. I want to make the point about the anti-amalgamation laws. A lot of people may not know about this, but in the colony of Maryland, they were facing a problem, right? The problem and the challenge that they were facing was they were facing the challenge of a woman shortage. So when you have a women shortage, right? For at the time, anyone that was a free property owning male, they had the ability to be able to vote or participate in this system. Okay. I'm with you. Right? So they had the ability to participate in this system. And so when you can participate in this, your family becomes a part of said property, right? But they were facing a shortage of women. So what they found is that there were certain individuals, examples of people that were of African descent, those that came from the motherland, who eventually got themselves free. There's only a few of those examples. Again, let me remind you, because if you're arguing with someone that may be of a little bit lighter complexion, they may tell you that there were many of those examples. There were a few examples. A brother by the name of Anthony Johnson happens to be one. He was Antonio before they named him Anthony, right? He got himself free. You know about Baltimore, I'm sure, Brother T. I'm sure you understand, a lot of the history there, right? But they created this thing called the anti-amalgamation law. Well, what did that do? Well, it made it possible and legal for someone of African descent to not be able to marry those that were of European descent or of British descent, right? To be able to preserve the women. When you go back to, for example, Roe versus Wade, this was over white males, okay, right? Controlling what? Their female, their womb, right? Because they know what's happening, what's coming, right? What's on the forefront for them. So when we analyze that law that they're talking about, right, the anti-amalgamation law, this is what created those terms and those labels that we started using of black and white. Then you got the anti-miscegenation laws that come a little bit later on. So all of these things are to say that they had a system of codes. They called them the slave codes back in the day. Then when they freed you, they called it the black codes. And all of these things were used to create the systems that then perpetuated the cycle that we see today. So that's
That's a
all I wanted to
fact.
say. Thank you for letting me in. I appreciate it.
No, I'm over here, man. You got me pumped up. I didn't pulled up my old presentation. He got see when we start building, brother T. He got me pulling up my stuff. So
Ooh.
you talking about look, let me
You
go
know she
here.
was going to do it. You know
I
she was
had
going to
I
do it.
had I'm gonna let us go. Hold on. I just wanted to show what he was talking about right there.
That's it.
The anti-miscegenation.
1664.
Yeah, so that's what you were talking about. How the Colonial Assembly of Maryland, yep, 64, and
Yeah.
yep, punish women, and so all of that, and so
So instead of them working hard to solve the problems that they had, what they did was they created a system that allowed for them to capitalize on the people that they had.
facts,
Mm.
facts. Oh my gosh, facts, brother. You said, look, you got Baba in the bill. Baba said, teach. Baba, I mean,
Hey,
said, teach.
man, much love and shout out to the Uhuru Academy, brother.
Yes.
Brother Baba, I mean, shout out.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And family, get your kids enrolled in the Uhuru Academy.
Yes.
Get your kids enrolled in the Uhuru Academy. Let me pull up their website real quick. Gotta get our kids out of the public food system. T, did I tell you Jay is out? We pulled him out. The village pulled him out. The village is sending them to Baba Amin. Did I tell you that, brother T, or no?
Yes. You told me you was in the process of doing it.
Okay, I told you that. Yeah, he's out. He's out. I think Baba Amin is in the process of pulling his transcripts and getting them transferred on over to his system. And Baba, I gotta holler at you for the consultation so we could talk with with the village. I know you said that you sent me the information for the orientation that's happening. So I did receive the orientation, but the village still wanted to do the consultation with you. So we were trying to get something cracking with you this week, Baba. But I want to show. Go ahead, brother. Say.
Yapa says Dr. Mayat keeps her presentations on speed dial.
Ring ring.
Look, as soon as he started talking, I was like, "Oh, I did a presentation. So let me pull it up. Give a just to give the people a visual to add to what the brother was saying." But this is the Uhuru Academy family. Go to uhuruacademy.com. I'm dropping the link in the chat, family. We gotta get our kids out of their system. Gotta get our children out of their system. The URL is on the screen, family. Just visit www.uhuruacademy.com. Baba Amin and Mama and Koyo, they're doing their thing with the babies. I'm just going through showing you the website. They're doing their thing with the babies. And Brother T, that's the ultimate trust, man. When you give your child's, you're basically giving your child's mind, right, to a system, and so you're entrusting this system with the molding and shaping of your child's mind and personality. We can't continue to trust a system that it has already failed us. Come on, we can't keep trusting that system.
We know what that is.
Right. We can't keep trusting that system. And so I trust the Uhuru Academy. I trust Baba Amin. I trust Mama and Koyo. You get what I'm saying? And it's not just solely their responsibility, because you should be educating your children at the house. Remember, the school, right? It's a whole village. And so I welcome the Uhuru Academy to our village, right? And we've become a part of their village. And so that's what it's about, family. So anyway, please visit www.uhuruacademy.com. Let's get our kids out of the school system. And look, you may say, well, I want another option. You got other options. You got Akabin House. You have Marcus Klein, Freedom Home Academy, the Ziacs with Brother Q Butt in them. It's a lot of Black independent schools out here. So, and some of them are virtual, some are in person, some offer both, right? Both modes of learning. And so anyway, family, you have these tools, you have these resources. It's time to support them and utilize them. Ashe. So anyway, Brother T, did you want to close us out, Brother T?
This preface was powerful as usual. I'm glad that we broke it down. And I love the fact that we had brothers and sisters come up to share their perspective, to add on to the bill. This made it a powerful discussion, and I appreciate everyone who came up tonight. Just wanted to make sure I say that before I started my rant, my closing rant. I wanted to understand that these things are happening today. When it's talking about how the government, either federal or state, runs away from the issue. We're now rejoicing because some are going to get up to $10,000 to $20,000 removed from their student loans, not knowing that it's not going to affect or help many Blacks. We kind of say that, hey, you know what? The housing problem has been solved now because more Blacks are moving into houses, but we still not getting the equity in our homes that we need in order to fund our future. We say, oh, now Blacks are employed more over the past year because you have more Blacks in jobs, which no, it's really gig jobs, the Ubers, the Lyfts, the Instacarts that are hiding the fact that our families cannot feed or clothe or house themselves. Now, one thing that the state is required to do, if you leave one point of employment, you're supposed to get an unemployment, right? Pay. Well, because you are an upstanding man or woman and you want to take care of your house, you found one of these gig employment jobs. You drive the Uber, the Lyfts, or the Instacarts. In the meantime, knowing that this cannot take care of your whole person or your family, don't you know the state will say that you're working and they will not give you your check? That's one way that they ease the way out. So don't think that just because it happened back then, it is not happening now. Keep our eyes open. keep our minds aware. That's all I want to say.
See, say that again. Keep our minds open. What'd you say, brothers? He say one more
Keep
time.
our eyes open and our minds
And
aware.
our miles aware. Ashe, brother T. Brother Nikia, close us out, brother. What are your closing words, brother?
My closing words are this: is get to know yourself and understand the power that you walk around with. A lot of people don't really know themselves. And when you can't identify yourself with love, with peace, with the things that your creator said about you, when you can't identify those things, you will fall subject to anybody's story about you. So get to know yourself. That's going to allow you to uplift yourself up out of the conditions that they're trying to keep us in. We shall overcome, as MLK said, right? I've been to the promised land, seen the mountaintops.
He said, I seen
I
it.
may not get there with you, but guess what?
We gonna get
Our
there.
people will get there.
Ashe. Family. I don't even want to
Imani.
close out that Imani. We gotta have faith. That's what he said, Imani. We gotta have faith that we're going to get there. We're going to get there. And when I keep, would get with sometimes Brother Nakia and Brother T, when I get frustrated about the condition of our people, I had to keep in mind something that Baba Nwali Mubarudi said to me. He said, Dr. Ma'at, you got to remember we're doing this work for the next 7 generations. So you may not see what you want to see in your lifetime, but what you're doing right now, it will manifest one day. And it may manifest in the next generation, the second, third, fourth, fifth. He says it may manifest 7 generations from now. But he said, know that we will win. Our ancestors said we will win, and I wholeheartedly believe that we will. Ashe. And so, family, please join us back here next week to discuss chapter 1 of The Color of Law. Brother, I hope that you come back next week as well.
I would love to.
Okay. All right, brother. 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, family.
Peace.
Have a blacktastic week.
Yes.
Peace.